Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
We'll just give a couple minutes for some more people to trickle in, and then we'll get going. How's the weather there today, this morning? It looks a bit sunny. I can see some shadows. Good.
Another beautiful
but
day in
it's
Central
sunny.
Oregon.
What's that, Christine?
Another beautiful day in Central Oregon. Sunny high desert.
Love it. And everyone can see a screen, right? Thumbs up. Perfect.
Yes.
This is my favorite shot. I use it in all my presentations, by the way. How are we doing on numbers, Emily?
We haven't moved, so I think we're good to go. Letting one more person in.
Perfect. Okay, so we have a smaller group today, which is great. We love being able to see everybody. So thank you so much for your time today. I know you're all very busy. So before we get into some introductions, I simply wanted to introduce our organization. So for those of you who haven't had the pleasure to engage with just yet, we are Destination Think. We are a global marketing firm that has been working with DMOs all around the world since 2009. And we have client partnerships in Australia, New Zealand, Europe, and a large piece of our portfolio is within North America. So here it says we bring places closer to people. And what that really means is, and our goal in everything we do with clients is just that. How we do this is through highly collaborative processes. We take this approach with every project we do, from strategic planning to marketing to promotion, and of course, staying ahead of all of those rapid changes in the economy, social and environmental landscape, especially in this ever-changing world these days. With Travel Oregon, it was a great partnership because we both believe that travel must lead to a better future and be able to adapt to ongoing crises such as the elephant in the room with this COVID-19, climate change, etc. So just as you are all here today, we truly believe nothing really works without engaging the people of a place, from tourism leaders right to residents. And with that, without that, really, driving positive and transformational change can be ultimately a challenge. So it's really important we work collaboratively together. A little bit of background about this project. Really the focus of the project in partnership with Travel Oregon, which began back in the beginning of this year, around January, February. So our goal together is to design a strategic vision and a transformational strategy. And this is really going to help direct the DMO and the industry on truly a clear path for future-proof tourism. So with this collaborative process, we have been engaging with the entire staff of Travel Oregon, industry stakeholders, residents throughout this process. And really this is to ensure we are gaining all perspectives to identify the direction, the priorities, and truly the need for this strategy to be successful. So in a few minutes, Frank will take us on a little bit more in-depth journey of what this process is, what we've learned, what we've heard over the last 10 months. So lastly, why are you here? This is really why we've asked you to participate today. It's really imperative to this process, and we truly are here to co-create the transformational strategy together. And with that, it will help us validate the vision, the priorities and actions for all of the state, regionally and statewide, and to help Travel Oregon lead the industry so you can all thrive in a constantly changing environment for many years to come. So with that, thank you again for taking the time out of your day today. We know you're all very busy and your participation is really valuable to this process. And we really look forward to all those discussions ahead. So with that in mind, a little bit about I talked to you a little bit about our team and why we're here, but I'm going to turn it over to Frank to lead us off on our team introduction.
Hi, everybody. I'm Frank Kuipers. In English, that would be Cooper or Fassbender, like the actor. I'm senior strategist. I'm leading this project. I'm also teaching in New York, in Austria, and in the Netherlands and in Belgium. I'm also a strategist for the World Bank in Africa. And now I have to pass it on to William, but William is not here. You're a very small group, and we only use him so now and then. So let's go to an accent that is nearer to yours, Rebecca.
Thank you. I'm Rebecca Godfrey. I am another senior strategist here at Destination Think. And I'd like to acknowledge that I'm speaking to you from the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. And that is the city of Toronto, Ontario, in Canada. I'm very happy to be here today to talk to you about Central Oregon. So thank you. And I'm going to pass it now to Emily.
Thanks, Rebecca. Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Neville. I'm a little bit closer than the rest of the group to you. I'm in Denver, Colorado, and I would like to acknowledge that I'm on the traditional territory of the Ute, Arapaho, Cheyenne, and Sioux nations. And going along with Rebecca, thanks so much for being here today. We really appreciate you guys taking time out of your day to speak with us. And I will send it over to Shannon.
Thanks, Emily. So yes, I'm Shannon Landreth, client strategist at Destination Think. So I am leading this project with the rest of the team and have had the pleasure to work with Travel Oregon and yourself since the beginning of time at 2021. I think 2020 is a bit of a blur to all of us. From my side, I'm based just outside of Toronto, so near Rebecca in Stratford, Ontario. And I'd like to acknowledge the land I'm speaking on, which is the territories of Anishinaabe, Adirondack, and the Mississaugas. And again, thank you so much for your time today and really look forward to our discussions. Before we jump in, cover a little bit of housekeeping. We are in a virtual environment and unfortunately we would love to be there with you today. That was the plan, but looks like we had to pivot once again. So we'll cover off a little bit of housekeeping and then I'll send it to Frank to sort of, like I said, cover off where are we in this process? What have we learned? What is the goal and the foundation we want to set today? And then we'll go into some breakout sessions to learn a little bit more about yourselves, you know, your region, your priorities, your aspirations. And then from there, we'll do a little bit of a shareback session and then go back into, then do our sort of homework. I don't know if some of you had the opportunity to prepare from the video that we sent across, but want to talk about the vision, specifically Travel Oregon's vision, and get your thoughts on that. We'll have a quick break, and then in the back half of our co-creation lab, we'll talk a little bit about attracting the visitors and what those priorities look like. And then lastly, and most importantly, how do we get there together? How do we bring that vision to life? How do we prioritize those actions and thoughts to sort of drive the transformational strategy forward? Before we end our day, I'll touch base on sort of where we go from here within the process. So you're in the loop of what does this all mean and how do we distill all of these insights to the transformational strategy? So housekeeping, if you are comfortable, please turn your camera on. We'd love to see your faces. Like I said, virtual can be challenging, so we want to make sure we're engaging in the best possible way. There is the chat feature, so if you want to start a dialogue in there with the other participants on the call, feel free to do that. We will be capturing all of the notes in the chat as well, so if you have any thoughts along the way with the exercises or questions, feel free to use that. In terms of speaking, if you're not speaking, just ask that you be on mute just so we can mitigate any background noise. And if you'd like to speak, there is the raise your hand feature on Zoom. If you haven't done so already, please update your Zoom name. If you hover over your face, there's 3 little dots and it helps you do that. And that just helps us put the name to the face. We'll have a quick break, and then with the breakout rooms, Emily will sort of prompt you to send you to your breakout room that we've organized. And if your breakout session does finish early, just come on back to the main room and we'll keep moving through our agenda. Lastly, we will be recording the session just to ensure that we're capturing all of the insights from these workshops and this important milestone of the process. And if you have any tech issues, Emily is your go-to person. So where are we? I'm going to turn this to Frank.
Hi again, everybody. Nice to meet you again, although not physically. That's what we normally do, right? We have these workshops. We go around in a state, a country, a province, wherever. And there is a get-together for people. Client buys coffee or tea or pie or cookies, and there is a great ambiance, like we say in my language. So people love to talk with other people. We can't do that, unfortunately. We know what is going on globally, so we're going to try to make it as cozy as possible virtually. So first I want to apologize. It's a bit of a dark situation over here where I am now 6,000 miles from where you are. So it's getting dark here already. So I really do my best so you can see some glimpses of my face. It's not that I want to be a person of mystery, not at all. But that's what technology does to us, right? So where are we? Where are we in this project? Let's start what we are doing here, but by using one metaphor and only one. It's an analogy. And it comes from a great thinker. He's Japanese, Kojin Karantami. He was a professor, well, he still is, I think he's still alive. I need to check that. But he was very, very popular in the 90s in postmodern thinking. And one of the things he wrote a lot about change and transformation. And he wrote that it's actually quite difficult to build a boat. Think about these Japanese craftsmen who really have high standards of perfection and value. It's very difficult to build a boat. That's what he says. But also he adds, it's even more difficult to repair a boat that is already on the ocean, because the boat needs to keep floating. And that's a bit the situation in which you are, not only you in Oregon, that's a global thing. Tourism is really, really transforming in a pace we've never seen before. There are so much things going on the globe. And in the meantime, you need to keep driving your business, you need to keep going, and you need to change. And that's quite a challenge. I don't need to explain that to you. So we Destination think we have a laser focus on places. We have cities as client, but we also specialize in tourism. And we work, for instance, with states like Colorado, and we work with California. I worked in Montana and Indiana. And we sometimes work with very small places, very, very lightly populated. So there is no difference. The challenge is equal everywhere. What we did is we went together, we joined forces with Travel Oregon in February of this year. And we promised to deliver by the end of the year a transformational strategy. That's why I used that analogy of the boat. Transformation is not, okay, we start from scratch, we need a new boat. You don't have the time, you don't have the resources to do that. So it's really about transforming, using things that work well and keep them and preserve them, add new things, repair other things. Some things need to go, some things need to change, some things need to speed up, and so on. What we did so far, maybe some of you have joined Governor Conference. I did a keynote. Afterward, we had these breakout sessions. I think 60, 70 people attended. We had interviews and so on. I'll give you the entire list of what we have been doing, but it was all about how do you envision the future? What do you think is needed for that future? How could that future look like? What are the patterns that you see, especially for Oregon? And now we are over the middle of the project and we flip. It's another kind of tone of voice. It's another kind of question you will have. It's really about what are we going to do? How do we get there? What needs to be done? So it's a more tangible level. Now, you are the 5th group of the regional DMOs in a row of 7. So this is the 5th workshop, and we do 7 workshops for all the regional DMOs. We've done a lot of other stuff. So we have sessions with a special group of interest. We have a session with tribes. That was last week. We will have sessions with the BIPOC community. We will have sessions with only the regional DMO leadership. That has been done already. We had already 1.5 session with the internal staff of Travel Oregon. That was a very intensive one. We did interview every staff member of Travel Oregon. We interviewed 10 or 12 of your thought leaders all over the state. Were people that probably represented the DMO, but also business owners, people that had a hotel, people that were representing organizations. We had group interviews with agency partners and consultants. We had that GovConf industry engagement, and we had an all-staff survey, and that all boiled down in a report called Destination Assessment. Okay, so I think after this workshop, 70% of the work will have been done. So next month, we're going to focus on creating a framework, writing your strategy. There will be going back and forth. We will have some extra consultations with some people, and then we will deliver in January. It should be finished. So some findings and observations. I know there was homework, there was a video, was again my voice you could hear. I hope I'm not too boring, but maybe you didn't have time. So there is a very, very quick wrap up here. My overall impression is whenever you talk to people from Oregon, especially in that industry session, I think when was it, July or something, that people automatically switch the topic to societal challenges, things that are going on in society. And people have a double attitude, people that represent the tourism industry. The first attitude is we should not forget that tourism is a good thing. It's a good force, and it can, when it's done well, it can add dynamics to a place. It can add growth and wealth, but also reputation. And it's sometimes very interesting to see your own place through the eyes of other people. They say we should not forget that, but we need to tell this more to people. Everybody agreed that we need to do a better job of explaining to our residents what the real value of tourism is. It's not only take the money and run. No, tourism is a much broader concept. Secondly, they said we need to be relevant to the people we represent. And again, you can interpret that in 2 ways. You can say we represent tourism industry, people that work in, everybody who has a restaurant or is doing a walking tour or is renting bikes, but also the communities, the people that live with us, and especially also the LGBTQ plus community, the BIPOC communities, the tribes, and our residents. That should not be overlooked, because what we learned the hard way, and there are many examples all over the globe, if you have unhappy residents about tourism, they will push back. And then it becomes really a business risk. Economically, people agreed that, okay, tourism brings economic value to a place, but it's very important. We need to tell a unified tale. If we don't do that and everybody's telling something different and measuring different things, you weaken your own story, right? And last but not least, environmentally, you have the ability to be stewards of your land and you have the duty to do it responsibly. So you need to lead that. And you can do that. You can lead. You can control how you market and to whom you market and how you promote. And you need to make sure that you work with your local people to protect them. That was in a nutshell what we heard from that industry. Now, more findings and observations were in the report. The first is probably the most important one: destination management. This is not about semantics, but as long as people do not understand what it is in the same way, you will have trouble. A lot of people define it, and that's the second bullet, as things we need to solve, problems that have been caused by tourism, and we need to fix them. That's only half of the story. Yes, it is about cleaning up the litter. Yes, it is about visitor pressure, people that do not know how to behave probably in a place. Yes, it is about traffic jams and congestion, and it is about wayfinding. Sure, but that's only 50% of what destination management means. It also means that you only can do your marketing and your promotion and your development when you, from in the core, engage the people that actually live with you. It's your license to operate, right? So you need to co-create, and that's why we do these workshops, by the way. We are already doing that for 10 years, long before everybody seems to rediscover the resident. You need to communicate the true value of tourism to residents, right? And educate them about it, why it is important. A win-win-win approach is also very important. So think about the 3 Ps. Probably you heard about it: people, profit, and planet. As long as we send an invoice to a third party, so there is pressure on the local community or there is damage to the natural environment, you don't have a win-win-win, right? You need to create long-term strategies. I think there's consensus about this, like every 2 years, a new transformational strategy. That's not gonna help you. You need time. You don't do that overnight. So stick to your plan. Let go of traditional marketing, which means that if you're serious about destination management, you need to look into to whom you're gonna talk. I just want to do one quote here of a CEO of a regional DMO who said, listen, Frank, Travel Oregon did a wonderful job. They built a great communication machine, but they can unleash that power now because it's necessary to our own communities, to our own people. You have the skills and the ability to communicate, right? But it's also equally about, if you're serious about resident engagement, how you're going to measure that, right? Sentiment and so on. And then destination development is at the heart of destination management. I think most people get that. If you promise things and people come, well, you need to make these promises come true. So this is expectation management. The worst thing that can happen is if experiences are not well developed, people will be disappointed and there will be negative word of mouth coming out, all of that. Next slide. Build Oregon's brand upon its identity. And I need to explain this because you have a great brand. You have probably one of the brands that has grown very fast, very strong over the last decade. I can testify that. I'm a dad of two kids, and they wanted absolutely to go to Portland. I don't know, 5-6 years ago, I had to speak in San Diego. Portland, Daddy. I was, why? Because that's a cool thing for young urban kids from Europe. But nowadays, if you ask people where is Oregon in France or the Netherlands or where I live in Belgium, people can say, oh yeah, that's West Coast and there is California and Washington. Most people do that. So you have a very, very strong growing brand. But what this means is that's not enough. This is a visitor-facing brand. It needs to come alive in the people, right? Again, fix that gap between people and tourism. Empower stakeholders and build social license. DMOs should become enablers, right? Not doing everything yourself, but create opportunities for others. Place climate action at the core of destination management. This is not gone away. I know it's very political, it's very sensitive, but the wildfires will be back next year, right? And climate change is not going to disappear off the agenda. So you need to relate to that because people will force you to relate to that. Lead by example. What are you going to do? If you're serious about management, meaning about sustainability, meaning about DEI, meaning about reaching out to communities, you need to walk your talk. You need to give the examples. Become more strategic about DEI. I think as long as you don't have that strategized in your strategy at the highest level, it will stay a list of actions, things you are nice to do, but it really should become a priority. And last but not least, establish new KPIs and measurement. How are we going to measure sustainability? How are we going to measure resident sentiment? All these new things. That all, and this is a sort of wrap up of a 60, 70 pages document. That all is in the report of things we have learned by talking to people and studying output. Now, what I'm going to do and Rebecca is going to do is listen to you. We're just facilitators today, so I really hope that you will do the talk. And I was very successful yesterday in Eastern Oregon, in Portland, in Willamette Valley. So why should it not be the same here? So we will send us in a minute to breakout sessions. And first, my first question will be, who are you? So introduce yourself, tell me something about yourself. And then there will be 3 simple questions. We just want to ask you to share your opinion. There are no bad answers, right? Every opinion is really appreciated. That's how we want to get to learn more about your region. And by the way, you sit here in this workshop to represent your region. You feel comfortable to think from your region. Okay, thank you, Emily. Again, recording in progress. So let's see, I have, is that Rachel? Do I pronounce that correctly?
Yeah, Rachel.
Okay, and then Joanna. So if I do not pronounce your first name correctly, please tell me, because I think it's important. I have Becca. I have, is that Kevney? Yep. Julia and Christine. Okay, right. My first question is simply introduce yourself. Say something about what is your job or what organization do you represent? And that's basically it. Rachel, why don't you start?
Right. Hi, I'm Rachel Zachem. I'm the transit planning specialist for Cascades East Transit. And we provide some rec services in Central Oregon that really help drive tourism and also help do it more equitably by providing access and environmentally friendly by taking personal vehicles off the road and bringing more people on a bus. So that is my role here. Wow,
that looks or seems to me very challenging because people are married to their cars, right?
Yeah, our rec services actually do really well though. We have one that's our highest ridership is Ride the River, and it's a shuttle that we run for people who are floating on the river to get back from the start or from the end to the start, or to get back to where their cars are. And then our Mount Bachelor service is also fairly popular, and it really is one of the main sources of transportation for people who work at Mount Bachelor to take from Bend to get up there. And we're also starting a new service this winter between Warm Springs and Mount Hood. And that has a major goal of bringing people from Warm Springs to employment in Mount Hood.
Okay, thank you so much, Rachel. Joanna, tell me something about you.
Hi, my name is Joanna. I am a regional director of sales for Merite Hotels, and I have 2 hotels in Central Oregon, a Holiday Inn Express and Suites and an Element by Westin.
Okay, thank you. Becca.
Hi, everyone. My name is Becca Berta. I'm the communications manager at the High Desert Museum, just on the south end of Bend. And I get to spend all of my time writing about the museum and exploring this huge high desert region and sharing that with people who have lived here forever, people who are new to the area, and people who are just visiting the area.
Yeah, and all the other workshops, and especially in the 2 last ones, the name Bend popped up easily. So it's extremely popular. And I think a lot of people envy Bend a little bit. Kevney.
Yeah, hey guys, President CEO at Visit Bend, the destination organization for the community of Bend. And yeah, really looking forward to this conversation. We've recently launched some new programs such as the Bend Sustainability Fund and some other efforts to really sort of address some of the questions that were just covered or some of the ideas covered in the initial report.
Kevney, that fund, is that something you got already, or is it something is there an aspiration to have more funding?
No, it was a tweak to city code. So we just put $840,000 through the first year grant cycle. But it's been a work in progress about 1.5 years, but just recently became reality over the last 6 months.
Okay, thank you. Christine?
Good morning, Christine McConnell with Visit Central Oregon. I'm the VP of Industry Relations for our organization, and just really appreciate seeing all the bright faces this morning. It's a really dynamic group, and just excited to hear the conversation too. Thanks for being here.
I think we already met, right, Christine?
Yes, we have. We were on the RDMO call together, and then I also participated in the collective after the governor's conference. So appreciate your work too. Thanks.
Yeah, you must get tired of me. Okay, Julia.
Hi, good morning, everyone. As Christine said, nice to see your faces, some familiar, some couple of new ones. I'm Julia Tyson. I'm the president and CEO of Visit Central Oregon, and we are the regional DMO for the state program, as well as managing the Deschutes County transient room tax collection.
Hi again, Julia.
Hi, nice to see you.
Emily, can we just have the first question? The first is the easy one, right? That's a consultant trick. The last one will be the most difficult. So if there was one thing I really love about Central Oregon, what is that? Just your passion, right? That's the easy one. So those who volunteer now, maybe I'm not picking you for the last one. Who wants to go first? What is it? One thing that really comes to your mind if you do your pitch to people? Yeah, I see some hands. Rachel.
I would just say the abundance of natural beauty. I'm from southeastern Ohio, where there's not a whole lot of natural beauty. So to me, just the abundance of, waterfalls, forests, mountains, rivers, clear streams, everything like that is just, it's my favorite.
Do you think, Rachel, it's known enough about Oregon, that variety of different natural resources, landscapes, and so on?
I think to people who that is of interest to them, that they know it, but I don't know. I honestly, before I came out here, I didn't really know much about Oregon or Bend. That was 3 years ago, but I just came out here because I took a job out here. But I think there's plenty of people, especially like on the eastern half of the country, like people living in Ohio and whatnot. They don't know what Bend is. And then, my friends come out and visit me and they're just like blown away. So I'd say on the West Coast, people know about Oregon and people know about Bend. But I'd say as you get out towards the East Coast and the Midwest, that people don't know about it as much.
Actually, that's not a bad starting position, right? Because you're all people of senior level and you represent marketing organizations and management organizations. So if people say we're so blown away because expectations are unknown or low, that's fantastic, because then you have very good word of mouth. Thank you. Joanna, you also raise your hand.
It's in line with what Rachel said, but specific to the way that you can go 10 miles in any various direction and find an activity that is different from each other. So you can go in any season, you can go and you can cross country ski, you can go a different direction, and you can be on one of the Cascade Lakes, you can go a different direction and you can be fly fishing. There's just so much diversity in the adventure aspect, the adventure component, and it really creates this lifestyle of people that are here because they prioritize that type of activity and adventure in their life. And so the culture here, it's like a thrill seekers culture, but not in this aggressive way. It's just there's something for everyone, and everyone fits in, and you can find the things that speak to your soul and connect you to this place.
Great. Thrill seekers culture. Okay, Julia, what are your thoughts about this?
Well, my first thought was it's hard to pick one thing because, as Rachel and Joanna said, there is so much variety. And having come from Colorado, I come from a mountain culture. So I think one thing that stands out to me about Central Oregon versus other beautiful outdoor places that I've lived, and there's been a number of them, I would say is the water. Water is something that comes to mind. I think, as Rachel mentioned, I didn't realize how many waterfalls there were here. I don't think that's something that's really well known about Central Oregon, or certainly wasn't to me. And one thing I really appreciate is that there's flat water, because I'm not a whitewater person. It scares me. And I love being able to actually get on the river. The rivers, as you probably know from Colorado, you have to be pretty brave to get going on the rivers. And to just be able to paddle down the Deschutes or on one of the lakes and just soak up nature and not feel like you're risking your life is something that I really love. And just the relaxation, I guess, of being on kind of calm water.
Yeah, I really appreciate you bring up water. Maybe I told you already in another workshop, I don't know, but you should look at the Scandinavians and especially the Norwegians and the Swedes. So the way they do now tourism marketing, it's so far from even 5 years ago. They showcase fresh water, fresh air, biophilia, tree hugger, stargazing, all these things people take or took for granted. And it really, really is very popular in Europe. Thank you. Kevney, last words on this one for you.
Yeah, I think these guys nailed it. I think it just the extreme diversity of both skill level and different types of activities really sets us apart from many other destinations. And I think that's also, we're probably going to get into that, but some of the pain points we see around the industry are led by that. And just that, I'm not going to say an over-reliance, but an over-reliance of the industry on things like those natural resources that are incredible and a huge opportunity, but also need some thought.
What would you say, Kevney, to a European that you met somewhere, I don't know, in the States, and you say, oh yeah, I've been to Colorado, it's fantastic. Why should he go to Oregon? Where do you make the difference?
Yeah, I think it's things like what Julia talked about, the ability to get on Tumalo Creek and go up North Fork Trail and see waterfalls. And there are still very well-kept secrets and hidden corners and places that are not exposed or have not been found. And I think that the big difference is, Bend is sort of the Denver of the Front Range in Colorado, and Bend's 100,000 people. So from a real compression standpoint of number of people, we still have a ton of wide open accessible space that, you know, in the congestion just really isn't real compared to the perception of what, you know, maybe a local feels about that. So I think that's the big difference, is just the ability to get away and really have space. And that's, again, based on my experience in Colorado versus recreating here in Oregon.
All right. Thank you. Emily, you have to move probably at the end of all these workshops. Next question, please. And then if there is one thing I would change about Central Oregon, what is the one thing you really would like to change? There must be something you want to change. Who I have not heard yet. Becca, any thoughts here?
I think, well, the first thing that jumped to my mind, when I lived in Portland for many years, I used to bike commute, and there was so much infrastructure for that, and it felt safe, and there was power, there was safety in numbers, and there's not that yet here in Bend. And I would love to see more diversity in transportation and safety, and see biking around town get easier and safer.
Okay. So what is missing then? If you say diversity, there's certainly something missing, like
more bikes on the road, more buses on the road. And so relieving some of that pressure from, you know, all of the cars. And I know that traffic is relative, and if you're coming from San Francisco, traffic is great here. But I'd still like to see a little bit more of that diversity in transportation on the roads.
Okay. No, yeah, absolutely. How do they call that? The modal shift or something, that people get aware there are different vehicles I can use during one trip and that kind of thing. All right, Christine, what are your thoughts about change? What should be or could be changed for Central Oregon?
Well, on a very superficial level, I'd love to see a little bit more diversity in some of our food offerings. Like, I miss like Asian food from the Bay Area, which is where I'm from. That's very, very at the top level. But, you know, I think what we're facing right now is just this transition of, you know, affordability and housing kind of escalating past living wage, and maybe more understanding of that. And like it seems to be hitting all industries here. And I think we're all just kind of like trying to figure that out. And so, you know, if that's not starting from, you know, like the community level and all the way up to the elected officials, then I think there needs to be more talk of that, and education and awareness of it in our region. I think it's something that it's just kind of been, you know, escalating, and then it's now gotten to a point where it's festering fast and rapidly, and I think that's something that we're all just trying to address and trying to be informed in. So it's something in this industry that I'm not sure if we've had to really face it the way we are thinking that we need to now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I hear it with every client, especially in the US. We work now in Colorado, Aspen, like rich people that live there are pushed out by richer people. So it's in all grades, on all scales and all degrees, but and also how to attract frontline staff for tourism if they can't afford housing or accommodation, right? So yeah, that's a huge problem. Absolutely. Okay, Kevney, were you raising your hand? Yeah, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback on what Christine said. I think, you know, when I think about change, there tends to be a lot of us working in silos, you know, even the community of Bend working its own silo. And the reality is, as this place grows as a region, what Prineville does and what Sisters does and what Madras does and how it interacts with Bend and Lapine and others is really important. And I see a lot of our elected officials sort of only working on their jurisdiction, and there isn't what I would call a comprehensive plan around where this community or where this region is going, and accepting that reality. And then I would say the other part is tourism often is left out of conversations at a very high level around economic development. And you have organizations like the workforce boards who are not making things like hospitality a major sector in designation. And I often think about what would happen if Travel Oregon or the state level agencies worked hard to make sure our regional workforce boards saw this industry as what it is, when we know it makes up 1 out of 7 jobs within the state. So I think a much broader sort of regional comprehensive plan and what tourism looks like within that from a transportation and workforce issue is something this region could desperately use.
Yeah, that's even a state thing, right? Statewide, yeah, because the roads do not stop at the borders of a region, of course. Okay, who wants to comment on this as well? Okay,
I have
Joanna.
one.
Yes.
I've lived in a couple of different ski towns, and I've seen better relationships between the mountains and the local communities. And I think a lot of it, in the relationship between Mount Bachelor and the locals, I think could use love and improvement. And I don't know if it's the transportation, the parking, the new pass systems, but overall, I feel like there's almost this battle locally to have it feel like a locals mountain at the same time that the mountain is trying to grow and attract more tourism. And just being someone that lives here, I've seen places have better relationships. And so that would just be a comment that I have. I don't know how to fix that. I don't have suggestions. I know that things that have worked in the past are better shuttle service between the mountains and the town, and better local discounts on lift tickets and ski passes. And so I don't think that we can talk about tourism in a mountain town without bringing up the relationship between the mountain and the people that live here and support the industries that support the mountain.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Great point. Could be cross-referencing to each other, and yeah, traffic and transport will be key as well. And great points. Thank you. Okay, let's move to the next one and the last one, Emily. The high value visitor, whoever that may be, that's open to you. The high value visitor is the one who spends the most money. That's what we need for Central Oregon, people with a lot of US dollars. Okay, Julia, why don't you kick it off?
So are you asking how we feel about this statement, basically?
What are your thoughts about it? How do you interpret high value? Is that uniquely dollars, or that, yeah?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I mean, I think there's the reality of our region, like Christine and Kevney alluded to, that like many regions, and having spent 10 years in Aspen, where, the billionaires are pushing out the millionaires, there's a reality to, visitors that would be attracted to feed our resorts and hotels. Although we do have, certainly more variety and price points than somewhere like Aspen, that's not affordable to the average person. But I personally wouldn't say, it's all about the dollars. And I think some of my colleagues would agree with me. I mean, we obviously, as we have more visitors and we have more people moving here, we want to see people who also prioritize taking care of the region, taking care of the way that they recreate, the way that they interact with our locals, and, sort of the atmosphere that we're creating as we have more and more people coming here. So, I don't think we prioritize dollars over, taking care of our region and people who feel, that they're going to take responsibility for recreating on our land would be probably higher value to us.
Yeah, and people that spend more time looking for immersion, that's probably the one you need, right? Because they spend probably they're not the most affluent kind of spender, but if they stay longer, that's absolutely great, because then they become ambassadors for your place.
Absolutely. And I think also just culturally, you know, people who are going to treat each other with kindness and respect and be welcoming of, you know, diverse people, I think will be important to our region moving forward, as we're seeing, you know, like I said, more people not only visiting, but more people moving here. You know, we want everyone to get along and be nice.
Okay, thank you. Rachel, what do you think about this?
I guess I have mixed feelings about this. I know it's important that, you know, money comes in, but I feel like there also could be some people who come in with privilege that don't fully appreciate our town and don't necessarily treat it the best. Then you have other people who come in who don't necessarily have the wealth or resources, and for them this is like such an experience and, you know, such a great place to be, and they are going to treat it better because, you know, it means a lot to them. So I know the money is important, but I think that also, you know, just the quality of how visitors interact with our area and the just the respect that they show it, and, you know, how they take care of it, whether they're, you know, stewards of it, or are they just here to have a good time and they don't care about the place that they're in.
No, good points. And yeah, a lot of people are a bit twisted. Like, we used to have the expression high yield, and I'm always like, what does it mean? Is it only dollars? Because what is the value of an Instagrammer that flies in and take that one photo of the Badlands and then disappears the next day? So yeah, it's checks and balances. Christine, your thoughts about this, please?
Yeah, since we had the RDMO meeting last week, I sat with this a little bit more, and I think like where at some point we were looking for that visitor that had the discretionary income and that would come here and spend all their money and leave. But I just don't think we have that type of destination here. I think there's many of us on this call that could say that they came here for vacation and fell in love with it and ended up moving here. I'm one of them. I think we are in that process of, you know, making strides towards attracting the visitor with the right mindset that we want to reach. Like Visit Bend has done some amazing outreach with, you know, Visit Like a Local and the Bend Pledge. And we have many of our communities here that are kind of fearful of becoming a destination like Bend for that high impact reason. So I think we're just, you know, taking that shift towards working towards changing that mindset of the visitor that has high integrity. And so I just don't think the heads and beds, the money, you know, that's not the most valuable visitor to us anymore.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that. And by the way, it's absolutely not about saying to people don't come or not at all, but who are you gonna encourage, right, in a positive way? Thank you for that. So let's go back to the main room. You can push that button, leave breakout room, and then we'll see each other again.
Welcome back, everyone. Okay, I think we have everybody. Oh, just a couple more coming. All right. Hope you had some good first discussion. We're going to do a little bit of a share back just to hear what the different groups had to say about those key questions. So Rebecca, since you're first back in the room, I'll turn it to you.
Okay, thank you, Shannon. So what I really loved about our group is they took that exercise very seriously, with starting with one thing I love. So we heard restaurants, access to the outdoors, the amount of sun, the sisters, especially with snow, the lifestyle. So it was a lot about the outdoors in terms of the access to it. But then it was also brought up that, other states hold Oregon up as doing a great job in terms of protecting their natural places. And that places like Visit Bend, for instance, are doing an excellent job of mitigating environmental damage and so on. And so maybe there are things that Travel Oregon can learn from that demo. Then we talked about one thing that we would change, and the first response was, I wouldn't change a thing. So we tried to get a little more detailed, and there were a few things, mostly to do with access, so getting more direct flights, and also with resident perception of tourists. What are the benefits? What is the importance of it? So making sure that everybody understands that. I think there is some concern about the homelessness increasing and the housing crisis and what we can do about that, how quickly it's becoming unaffordable to live in certain parts of the region. We also talked about recycling infrastructure and that it's different in various communities. So there's a concern that, even if visitors come and they want to protect the land, that often the resources, the infrastructure isn't there to support recycling or what have you. So definitely the parks need better infrastructure. I mean, now it's hard to find places to park and so on. So it's a shared responsibility. It was something that we talked about. And then with respect to the high value visitor, nobody was 100% convinced that it's the person that spends the most money. I think what was important is that they support businesses and therefore there is money coming into the community from outside. But our group was more interested in those that want to volunteer, give back, and really have connection to place. And that was a key way of thinking about all those attributes: people that will support small business, that will give back, that volunteer when they visit, that are socially, economically, environmentally conscious. Those are people that have a connection to place. And those are the ones that are high value. And so it's up to us to provide those positive experiences to foster word of mouth and bring those visitors back. Repeat visitation being the thing that we know brings more.
Perfect. Sounds like a really good discussion. Thanks, everyone. And Rebecca. Frank, what about your team?
Yeah, thank you. For the love about Central Oregon, they cheated a little bit in the beginning. It was about diversity and abundance, so they could smuggle in more than one. But yeah, it tells something about the love of the people for the place as well. So the abundance of natural beauty, the mountains of forest and so on. And it's probably not as widely known across the country. You can go 10 miles in any direction and find an activity that is different from another, from cross-country ski, cascade lakes, fly fishing. So there's thrill seeker culture for sure, but people that love more calm experiences, absolutely. Central Oregon is your place. What really stood out for me is water, waterfalls. Also the fact it's not only white water, but there is flat, calm water, something that you can relax. And I asked, what do you say to a European if you have to compare to Colorado? And they said, Bend is probably as known or popular as Denver, but we have so much space, wide open space. It's less crowded, less known, and it's a bit of a hidden gem, right? Then the change transportation stood out, more diversity in transportation, right? More a model shift, like we sometimes say, biking, buses, relieving traffic congestion. And also that could improve the relations between the mountains and the local communities, but sometimes it feels like they're cut off. And also, how can you work better together? Mountains and local people is, for instance, local discounts. More general, what needs to change is that tourism is often left out of high-level conversations. When it comes to economic development, it's overlooked, and it makes 1 out of 7 jobs in the state. And we should love less working in silos on a state level. It's important that we all work together in the region, but also with other regions. We need a comprehensive plan. So that's what we're going to try. And of course, no surprise, affordability is also becoming an issue in Central Oregon. High value visitor. Yeah, everybody agreed a little bit. People who take care of the region, people who treat others with kindness and respect and be welcoming of diverse groups of people. It's important that money comes in, someone said, but on the flip side, those with probably less US dollars may treat it even better because the experience may mean more to them. They had to save even money. So as I have to write it up, it's really the high integrity visitor, right? We're not going to exclude anyone, but we're really going to encourage people that visit like a local. And somebody brought up the pledges that are so popular now in the tourism space. Why not for our region or for Oregon as a state? Thank you. Over to you, Shannon.
Thank you, and Frank and team. As Frank said at the beginning of our call, we did send a little bit of homework. It was a video around Travel Oregon's current vision. So for this exercise, we're going to stay in the main room, and I'm going to turn it over to Frank to kind of set us up.
Yeah, we keep you together for this exercise. So if you have opened that video, you will have seen the current vision. You find it also on the website of Travel Oregon. And I am neutral about it, right? Do we need to change it? If you like it, why do you like it? And it can stay as it is. But also, do we need to tweak? Is it about wording, or do you want to have a radical change? That's what I actually want to test with you. So here it is again. So no worries, like they say in Canada. If you have not read it, here it is. A better life for all Oregonians through strong, sustainable local communities that welcome a diversity of explorer. This is where you want to go. That is your ideal picture. That's why you are working in tourism. So what are your thoughts? Who wants to kick it off? This is a difficult one. We are in the main room. Becca, you want to go first? Thank you.
This definitely resonated with me. I thought it was spot on, but I think to me also what was missing is some kind of recognition of environmental stewardship. And I know that came up in a lot of everyone's answering of those first 3 questions is having people visit here who respect the landscape and are going to take care of the environment alongside the locals. So I think that's what was missing, is some kind of acknowledgement of caring for the landscape.
Okay, Becca, what about the word sustainable? Is that not covering that issue enough for you?
I don't think so. That to me was in relation to the communities and the people, not so much the environment. So I thought that was, and maybe for some that does cover that. To me, that was speaking more to the people than the landscape.
Okay, thank you. Really appreciate that. All right, who wants to go next? It's always better to volunteer. Right, Julia, what are your thoughts about this?
Yeah, I'm sort of a little undecided. I mean, I think it's a really strong statement to say a better life for all Oregonians. I guess where I'm not sure, a little bit to what Becca's saying, is the rest of it the totality of what a better life for all Oregonians mean? means, and does that cover it to say strong, sustainable local communities, because it doesn't necessarily hit on the environment or some other ways that tourism drives a better life. So I think it's a good statement. I don't know that it needs to completely change, but there may be some elements that are missing, which I'm not entirely sure what they are yet.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. A better life, is that too flat for you, too vague for you? Should it be more specific?
I mean, from where I'm sitting, I feel like that's a really strong statement. I guess part of it is I wonder, people who don't understand how tourism drives a better life, it may fall a little bit flat. I mean, I think there's, we're obviously the tourism industry, so we understand that tourism is driving a better life for a lot of people through a lot of ways. And I know a mission statement or vision statement can't say it all in one or two sentences, but I wonder, for people who are not in the tourism industry, do they understand how we're driving a better life? And that's where I wasn't sure if the strong, sustainable local communities that welcome a diversity of explorers necessarily answers that question for a layperson who's not in tourism. And, I may be a little bit swayed by some of the anti-tourism sentiment I'm hearing, of late, where people are like, close the door, we don't want more people. I question, I guess, whether this statement explains that for somebody outside the tourism industry.
Yeah. If you say that some people push back, is that because there are too many at the same time at the same place, or is it really like there are incidents like people do not behave in a way that is proper, or they don't know the informal behaviors or something like that?
I mean, I know, some other parts of the state, like on the coast, they've actually visually seen that sort of pushback to tourism, the kind of the tourists go home mentality. I haven't personally seen or heard of that in Central Oregon. I don't know if anybody else has, but I do think there's a sentiment of, to some extent, and I know every destination feels this to some extent, is that we don't need more people here because we want to enjoy it and not have the negative impact. And so, just getting some messaging from, citizens who are like, stop with the tourism. We don't need more people. I guess, it'd be nice to see an explanation of the positive impact that tourism's having. And I think this touches on it. I just don't know if it's the whole of it, for how tourism creates a positive impact on the region or the state.
Yeah, it could lead to confusion. That's what I hear you saying. Thank you. Gevni, you raised your hand.
Yeah, just piggybacking a little bit on what Julie was talking about. I think, and we're guilty of this as well, right? We write vision and mission statements that sound appealing, and depending on who reads them, they have different intent. And I got super nitpicky when I read this. And I think things like saying a better life for all Oregonians, but then having no concrete way in which we're supporting houselessness or workforce issues or other things leaves it a little empty. I think, from the seat I sit in, being one of these local communities, there's a huge lack of connection between a group like Travel Oregon and a community like Bend. And I fully respect the model, which is Travel Oregon working through its RDMO and the RDMO working through the community. And then the last piece would be pointing out words like explorers. For decades, we have leveraged our natural resources. And again, where is the concrete example in which we're reinvesting the lands we're leveraging in our marketing? And so, being a marketer, I most certainly appreciate the appeal of how this is written and how it sounds to the layperson, if you will. But being from someone on the inside of the industry, and honestly, from a perspective, I need to be held more accountable. A statement like this has a lot of sort of pitfalls, if you will, and that's where I really struggled with it.
Yeah. So an explorer, you think the word is too loaded, right?
Yeah, I think again, to me, that implies being outside. It's outside recreating. It's taking advantage and exploring a state, and it implies access to trails and natural resources. At least that's the emotion it invokes in me. And whereas again, is our campaigns like Take Care Out There, which is really a responsible recreation messaging, really enough for the amount of footprints the industry is putting on that land? Or do we really need to think about investing real dollars into taking care, repairing, restoring, and having a truly sustainable outlook on the industry?
Okay, no, thank you. Thank you for that. Very interesting. We're gonna do a break in a few minutes. Maybe we have time for a last one. Somebody I did not hear today yet.
Adara has her hand up there, Frank.
Okay, where are you? Okay. Udara, do I pronounce that correctly?
Yeah, it's Udara.
Udara. Okay, perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, I agreed with some of the other comments around sustainability and how it relates. I guess for the rest of the group, I'm the project manager for the Rethink Waste program at the Environmental Center. So that's the lens I bring. But I wanted to also point out, since we're on the topic of the term explorer, that it didn't feel like it reflected the type of visitor that we're looking to connect with, especially just on reflections with the Indigenous Peoples Day on Monday. That term felt like it was like harkening back to like Columbus and Magellan and that kind of explorer, as somebody who is looking to be in a space that's like finding a new land. And yeah, so all of that baggage that comes with that term. And I know you have a Indigenous communities group, so I want to make sure that, I mean, their voice in that context is prioritized. But anyway, I'm just curious if that had come up there. And
yeah, Dara, you really hit the nail here. So they did not agree about everything. They're people, but they agreed about one thing, that for them, explorers, and they get it right. Probably the initial thought was people that are curious and are active. But for the tribes, that word has to go, because it really can lead to misunderstandings and very painful ones. So no, you're absolutely right. Okay, thank you. Yeah, if somebody still wants to reply, there is still the chat button. Also, the things that are written there will be noted by us. We collect every snippet of text, so be assured about that. And how long do we have a break, Shan?
Let's do 10 minutes. So if you want to come back at 10:25, that would be great. And we'll move on to our next exercise. So 10:25 is back. Thanks, everyone. Okay, we'll get going in just a minute. Hope you had a good break. It goes by fast. Okay, moving on to our next exercise. I'm going to turn it back to Frank to kind of set it up, and then we'll go back into our breakout room. You're just on mute, Frank.
This is a classic one, right? Somebody talks and he's muted. Okay, still happens to me. So, attracting visitors, and we touched a little bit already on it when say high value visitor, because there's a lot of confusion, the high yield visitor and so on. And we're going to send you again in a breakout session, a short one. And this is really going to be about, like we said in the report, you have the power to decide who we're going to focus on, right? To whom we're going to market. So what could be the number one, the tier one, the low-hanging fruit, especially after COVID-19? What is the one we really need to put a lot of effort in? Communication, development. What is probably a lower priority for you, visitors to encourage? We don't say no to people, but you know, we're marketeers, so we need to make choices. And then for the long shot, so the untapped potential, we call it the unexplored kind of visitors, people we might not have thought about it, like a very particular niche, for instance, what could be very powerful, because we need to develop that and build that relationship during years. So yeah, let's talk a bit about markets in the next breakout session. Yes, please, Shannon, Emily. All right, here we are again. We lost one person, but she will come back. So we really need to talk, and the easiest way to do that, that's what I learned from the other workshops, is what is your lowest priority, right? Who might not be, and you touched already on it in the first questions in the breakout session, who might not be your first target here, the visitor that you probably do not want to prioritize? Who could that be? Right. Joanna, why don't you go first?
Oh, I was hoping I wouldn't be called on for this one. That's a tough question. Who we wouldn't welcome. And I think we've all kind of already said it. It would be the you know, the large groups that would leave big footprints on our natural resources without bringing anything else to the table. The people with privilege that would want to come in and create barriers for locals on our, you know, trails and in our forest and polluting our waters. So I think that's the easiest answer to that question, but I can't say I know who specifically that would be in terms of a demographic of traveler. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, you have geographical one. That's probably a bit obsolete in this game. Then you have demographic, and then you have psychographic, right? You use these expressions like the outdoor adventurer or something like that, or the free spirit, or the history buff, or okay, somebody else? Yeah, Christine.
Yeah, Joanna, I think when I first was thinking about that, I totally agree. It's kind of hard to look at that question or that category without like saying, you know, without knowing people's values or, you know, where they're coming from. But the way that I kind of look at it too is also, we're not prioritizing the markets or the visitors that are looking for those first tier destinations of like Las Vegas or, you know, San Francisco or Los Angeles. Like, we know that we're not that destination where people are looking for all the glitz and the glamour and, you know, just those types of experiences. And I think the way that I would put it is that we want to draw the visitors that are looking for an authentic experience. And working in global sales, I think we want the visitors that are interested in that kind of authentic American experience, and more when they're at a level of their travel where they're looking for a destination that is going to be like more Americana, if that makes sense. And those are the types of visitors that we know who are going to explore the museums and also look for certain outdoor recreational experiences, interpretive experiences. They're going to be kind to our lands and our communities. That's how I kind of see that market. So the low priority are the ones that are looking for all the really, I don't know how to phrase it, the experiences that everyone else is looking for, and just like come here, do whatever they want, and not really try to.
We call it generic, right?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Thanks.
Yeah, it's the kind of visitor that says it's Tuesday, this must be Oregon, it's Wednesday, this must be Colorado, something like that. The bucket list tourist. Yeah, this is very important for European destinations these days because they have a very clear answer to that. They're not gonna exclude people, but they say like cruise ships that only stay 4 hours in a city like Venice or Barcelona, because there is so much pressure coming on a city like there's 5,000 people and they all go to the same squares. So if they're not willing to stay at least 3 nights, that's the one we're not want to prioritize. That's how they solve it, right? It's something more like that. Okay, but you also brought, you flipped the conversation to who do we want? People that love, and I love the expression Americana, authentic experience, bit echoing what Kevin said, right? We're so genuine and we have so much to offer like Colorado, and it's so unknown. So Kevin, you're next.
Yeah, so one thing and this takes us back to that prior comment, and maybe this isn't the place, so tell me if it's not, but when we talk about things like climate change and we talk about long air travel, where do you see that fitting into this conversation about soon to be low priority unexplored? Because we think a lot about having more regional visitors who are more aware of interacting with the natural ecosystems we offer, are potentially more educated and able to navigate the system better. But at the same time, you don't want to sound you're excluding, you know, global travel and all these things. And maybe this is a conversation for later, so tell me to stash it, but how do you see that conversation fitting into this? Because we as an organization tend to focus on a much more regionally based 8-hour tire radius, somebody who's driving in with a family of 4. They know how to interact with Bend. We really focus on repeat visitors as our sort of top tier, because that visitor has been here. They know how to interact with the community. They know how to navigate the community. They know how to respect the community. Where does climate change sort of fit into that grand picture is the question.
Yeah, there's actually, you can go all the way in the next exercise, and we really want to have your ideas how we can solve that, right?
Yes.
But the short answer here is, take for instance, international visitor. If you do not encourage them like generic campaigns worldwide, come to Oregon, we're fantastic, we're awesome, and you don't make it very specific niches, then you have another audience. Then the one international visitor motivated to see all these things, right? So there is then a natural threshold of motivation. So it's by prioritizing. And another part of the answer,
Hey, Frank, you're breaking up a
look,
little
only
bit.
steal from the best, right? Yeah, I have an unstable connection.
Yeah, maybe turn off your camera.
Okay. Is this better? Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, all right. So where was breaking up? Did you hear me like international visitor motivation threshold? Did you hear that?
We heard pieces of it, but not all of it.
Okay, yeah. So what I was saying, like if you do an above the line campaign internationally in a very generic way, people will come because you become on the bucket list, right? Great things to see in Oregon. But if you don't do that in a generic way, but in a very specific, tailored way, what will happen is that international tourists like me will come if they are very motivated, right? So your selection is the motivation of people. And that's what a lot of destinations have done wrong. The problem of Barcelona and Venice and Yellowstone Park is bad destination management, bad planning. And it's more difficult to fix that than to prevent it. And then the last thing I wanted to say was, for instance, places like Iceland or Greenland are places you really need to look into. You can do funny things in campaigns, but weaving in already education. And Greenland even has a fantastic campaign, why Greenland may not be for you. And it's funny, but if you read it, they really say you need to put a lot of effort to come here. And not, you don't have to copy that, right? But that's the way of thinking about educational campaigns. Iceland has an Icelandic academy, and they're learning people how they behave. For instance, when they go in a hot tub, it's always naked over there. Now there is renting of Canadians and Americans. We're so shocked, we're embarrassed, but that's what they do for more than 1,000 years. So people should know, right? That is what you can expect there. So that's how you can do that. Okay. So authentic Americana, who you think is really the one you want to have here? Are there any niches you want to target? And you already suggested sustainability. So what kind of passion do these people have?
I think definitely the people who are looking for that natural outdoor experience to explore our landscape, but should we go to Central Oregon? Should we go to Tahoe? What can we do? Those people who were kind of on their, top 3, top 5 destination list, what can we do to set ourselves apart from those other places that are similar? It's more than just bikes and beer here. There's, much more. There's culture, there's art, there's, every kind of outdoor activity you can imagine. So what can we do as a destination to set ourselves apart from those kind of similar places?
Yeah, no, great points. What should it be? Give me ideas.
A new set of recognition that we've just acquired in Central Oregon are the dark sky designations, and Sun River has the dark sky place. Prineville State Park is a dark sky park, sorry. And with those designations, they're the first two in the entire state of Oregon. I think that's going to bring in some new recognition, a new type of visitor that is, looking to come to destinations that have the open sky and the dark sky designation. I think that's just the beginning of that effort here in the state. And there's actually two of the advisory committee dark sky folks that live in Bend and are doing that work in the region. Those two designations were really actively instigated by the people at the Oregon Observatory, but and also the park managers in Prineville. But as those recognitions start popping up, and I know there's more in the works throughout the state, especially in Southern Oregon. So I think that's an area, a niche that is going to be beneficial for us, and we'll see where that leads. I think also with the Indigenous and the tribal efforts, that's going to bring in another type of visitor that is, we used to promote that more throughout the state. And I think there was some disconnect there in some of the efforts. And now with that, hopefully relationship being reopened, that could be another area too for cultural heritage. Also, as a region, I think we're starting to explore more for the arts too. So those are
this is awesome, Christine. Actually, now you mentioned two niches that Saskatchewan in Canada, it's a bit it's the biggest province and everybody laughs at it because nobody lives there. It's underpopulated, 900,000 people. It's really huge. It's much bigger than Oregon, I think. But there is a market for people who love, by the way, Europeans love these long rides, empty spaces, especially after COVID-19.
You're frozen, Frank.
Or even websites and blogs. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Try talking now with your camera off.
Yeah, I just stopped.
Okay, you're good.
Yeah. So I said that I really love the proposal of Christine. Did you hear that? Okay, right. Okay, we still have a few minutes. Becca, what are your thoughts?
Frank, you kind of cut out, but did you ask for me? I couldn't quite hear you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
No, I think
sorry,
I agree with Christine. I think that was a great example, the dark sky designations. I think finding some of those niches that make us unique, that help people have a more well-rounded experience, which I think will naturally bring in the people who are going to be more respectful of the residents, more respectful of the landscape. I think having that more well-rounded experience will naturally, hopefully, bring those people. And it's finding some of those niche hooks that make us really unique.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Let's go back to the main room, and then we will do a quick share back.
All right, if you guys just want to hit leave room, it'll take you back to the main room.
All right, welcome back. Our other group will join us shortly. We're over the halfway mark. You made it.
Yeah, Shannon, I'm gonna switch my video off because I have internet problems.
Yes.
Normally it works very well but there is so much video.
That's okay,
Yeah,
Frank.
it's
No
a
worries.
hotel.
Thank you. Didn't lose our other group. Are they coming? I did close the breakout room, right?
Not yet. I can do it.
Oh, I did. Sorry.
No worries.
Must have not worked on my end. Thanks, Emily.
Yeah, of course.
Two more seconds. Gotta let the countdown. All right, welcome back. Frank beat you guys a little bit quicker, and then I forgot to close your room, so sorry about that, Rebecca. With that in mind, Frank, you were back in the room first. Do you want to go first to share your discussion? Oh, he's just on mute. Just unmute, Frank. There you go.
Yeah, absolutely. I can hear you because now you are cutting away here. But if you can hear me, the soon to be, or let's start with the low priorities, right? Makes sense. Large groups that leave big footprints on our natural resources, people with privilege that may create barriers for locals. In general, people are looking for generic urban experiences, the glitz and the glamour people. But on the other hand, the soon to be, those looking for an authentic American experience, call it Americana, and then we can define that. Those who will explore the museums, interpretive experiences, outdoor experiences, people that want to be kind to our lands, and makes sense after COVID-19, more regional visitors who are able to navigate the land better, let's say in 8-hour tire radius. And then the long shot, the unexplored, overall people looking for natural outdoor environments. But two powerful niches, the one who are eager to learn more about the indigenous communities, cultural heritage and the arts. And the other niche is really the dark sky designations. So people that love that wide open experiences, dark night, stargazing, wide open skies, a bit like in Saskatchewan and other ones. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Frank. Rebecca, what about your team?
Yeah, thanks, Shannon. So we didn't spend a whole lot of time on the tier 2, but in general, I think everyone sort of agreed it was difficult to define or put characteristics around, but people that are rude to frontline workers was definitely a group that we don't necessarily want to encourage. And in general, and back to Frank's point, people that don't care about the place. And one of the things we talked about was that it would be important to make people understand the differences within Central Oregon, so that Central Oregon is not Portland, and maybe there is a line that we may not want to cross. Maybe it's not healthy to cross to try and target those people that have already made up their mind that that's what Central Oregon is about, if that makes sense, right? And then in the tier 1, we recognize that there are a lot more drive to markets that we're seeing as opposed to fly to. And so trying to target people that stay more than 2 days, so 4 to 5 days perhaps from those drive to markets. And you know, people are looking for different things to do. There's lots of family groups coming, but there's also, you know, people who like the van life. There's new visitors that we want to spend a little more time understanding and marketing to. We also want to get the message out that there's a lot to do that doesn't require money, that you don't have to buy a lift ticket or go to fancy restaurants there, but the culinary scene is definitely something that is actively being worked on. And so within that tier 3 area, there were a number in my group that were working actively on attracting foodies, talking about the strong local food scene, and the fact that there's sort of a city quality that's in Central Oregon that is sort of still a mixture between urban and rural, and some of the unique aspects of food, and putting ourselves on the map for people that want to go to restaurants in San Francisco, or that, and showing them that there is that diversity in Central Oregon. I think we talked about, you know, maybe trying to look at where the cheap direct flights are going, and that maybe the people that are in those towns, so be it Reno or other sort of smaller centers, are the people that care a bit more about the land. And maybe those are people we want to think more about attracting. And somebody actually put it really well. We want to market to Hallmark Channel watchers. So the people that really like the small towns and rural communities. We could potentially look at the motorcycle market because of all the beautiful long drives that you can do in Central Oregon, and the fact that there's sun 300 days, I'm so jealous, or more a year. And also single women travelers that we want to try and, because it's a safe, there's great culinary, there's a lot of reasons to try and attract that single women visitor.
That's great. It's a good insight. Thanks, Rebecca and team. All right. So our last exercise, but very important as we think about our transformational strategy and how we bring that vision to life, is how do we get there? So I'm going to pass it over to Frank to walk us through our final exercise of the day.
Hi, everybody. This is the main exercise, the main course, or pièce de résistance, like they say in my language. And because it's really, you need to have a strategy, right? But that is the bone. We also need to have some meat to hang on the bone. So we're looking actually for ideas. The more tangible, the more specific, the better. Because we think a vision is great, a strategy is great, but it should come alive into people. The execution is actually the most important part. It's not a document that you keep somewhere in a drawer, right? So the next exercise is the pending question is, what needs to be true? What needs to be true to make that future for tourism happen in Oregon, and a qualitative kind of tourism, of course. What needs to be true socially, And I think we addressed a lot about the social changes that are rapidly happening economically, because that was my initial image, right? You need to keep the boat floating. So people were 1 out of 7 people work in tourism directly or indirectly in Oregon. So it's a very important economic asset, but also environmentally, people that do no harm to environment. And we think that the sweet spot for the ideal visitor that may not exist, but is the one in the intersection of these 3 circles. So what needs to be true for product and for promotion? Now, what is a product? We're going to be very mild. Any idea you have. So that could be, we need lobbying work, we need policy regulations, but very tangible stuff like wayfinding or signage or training or education for visitors or DEI training for our staff or storytelling programs, volunteer programs, and promotion the same. What kind of promotion do you need, right, to attract that visitor that you want to prioritize, the one that really adds value to your place? So these are the questions. And if we have time, we're going to prioritize. What is a low-hanging fruit? What is the most urgent? And what is the one that is feasible? Because sometimes you have things that are very urgent, but people are hesitant, like probably not something for tomorrow. And sometimes things are very feasible, but probably not the highest priority, nice to have. So that's what we want to get out of you. And again, we're going to try to do that in breakout rooms. Okay, so there will be a Jamboard, as we call it. We will take notes of what you say. You just need to do a brainstorm. We're just going to ask you, hey, what do we need for product? What do we need for promotion? We bring it all together. So we will do the work there if you just keep talking. Okay, let's go in breakout sessions. All right, here we are again. Small team, but we'll do our best because this is a quite challenging task. Now, throw out all the ideas you have, and this is important, right? Because you are here to represent your region. So have you any ideas about new product or also things that have to go that's equally valuable? But what do we need to do to help you, right? That is the question here. Who wants to kick it off? Okay, you still need to think, which is okay. We have time for this one.
Well, I'll start by, and I don't feel like this is the sentiment throughout the entire region, but being a resident in Bend, well, maybe, I don't know, I'm just kind of thinking out loud, but like, as far as social goes, like our community may not fully be aware, and we could do a better job communicating like the value of tourism here. I think we all talk about this in a different way. And tourism also seems to be a target as a source of income that people are confused about, like where it's funded from. And as soon as you say the word tax, then people automatically assume that it's their tax dollars, but it's not. And so I feel like that's a conversation that we have all the time. And specifically in Central Oregon, I think there's some confusion about like Visit Central Oregon's role as opposed to Visit Bend's role, and how we collaborate, but also, you know, where we have different efforts too. So I'm not sure if that's a social thing or not. I feel like it's just like sense of community, the community sense, and just like helping to maybe demystify some of the preconceived thoughts about the value of tourism here, if that makes sense. Thanks.
Yes, totally. Thank you, Christine. Any ideas? I just want to push you further. How are we going to do this, educating the community? Is it a roadshow going in all the small places? Is it written communication? Is it online? Is it hearings of people? Is it any ideas about that? Or maybe it's all of that? I don't know.
I think it does need to be multifaceted, because we have so many different age groups here, and so many different ways that each of the communities communicate to their constituencies and memberships. It's a lot to take on, but yeah, we have done, and well, especially since this last year, it's been limited, and like how much time we all have with Zoom meetings, and you know, I really appreciate everyone spending this much time in this effort today, this morning, but finding the right opportunities to get some of those messaging, get some of that messaging out there. It seems like we do need to use all of our resources for town hall meetings, Zoom meetings, just one-on-one phone calls. Everyone has a different way of receiving that information.
Okay, and then my last one, Christine, to challenge you on this. I hear from other regions that, and there is no bad intention, but that Travel Oregon is far away. You're a very big state, right? And they're based in Salem, and people live in Portland. So how can they help? How can they contribute?
Can I take a shot at that? I think supporting Christine, or Christine, were you going to respond?
Well, yeah, let me just say that, like, you know, we are the regional conduit and partner with Travel Oregon, so we try to get that messaging out there. I think they have many channels, including us and the DMOs and the partnerships that they have established throughout the state. I think continued support in that way is would be, you know, helpful. Another thought that I've had when it comes to that is maybe, you know, I know that there's been talk of how interdepartmentally they have, there could be, you know, there's the mention of them working in silos, and, you know, the crossover of maybe lack of knowing what each of the departments are working on, and, you know, how that gets filtered down to the regions. So like kind of like a similar model that Oregon Business has, where they have regional representatives in each of their tourism zones, might be another way to kind of have a Travel Oregon designated conduit in each of the regions. Could be a thought too. It's just something that seems to work for some of the other organizations out there. But yeah, go ahead, Kevin.
Well, the one thought that came to mind was just if there's somebody at Travel Oregon who can agree upon the KPIs or the metrics we're seeking, I think it's ultimately upon, you know, Julia and myself and other DMO leaders to be the ones to go to Rotary clubs and to deliver that message locally. But if there's some way that an organization like Travel Oregon really gathered the research, distilled the research, and there was a agreed upon set of metrics we are all reporting on, and we are simply the mouthpiece within our own community, that efficiency model could be really successful. And I think that's we end up grabbing our own research. We end up finding our own research. We're all investing in Smith Travel research or whatever data point we're trying to tell. And I think if I'm going to call it a research department, it could be a staff of one that when Christine has a question about Central Oregon data, she can go and obtain that data, but we're all reporting that out in our own communities. I think that would be, I guess, a tangible idea or addition. And maybe that supposedly lives within Travel Oregon. I don't see that and I don't receive that. But I think that would be super helpful in terms of an action item they could take on. And I will sort of switch tunes on another social idea is, the workforce issue. There's really nobody within Travel Oregon who is paying permanent attention to workforce or labor. And you see this in a lot of other industries, whether it's construction or tech, where you actually have workforce people out there going around to job fairs and speaking about those industries. And that's creating the pipeline within the youth that they see things like the construction industry as a viable path forward. And we don't have that constant voice. So in the social realm, the workforce issue, a more consistent voice, whether through Travel Oregon or even Oregon Restaurant Lodging Association. So there is a point of contact that we can then lean on and learn best practices, I think would have value as well.
Yeah, thank you for that, Kevney. Two great proposals and very tangible, I think. So for the moment, if you need data for Central Oregon, don't you even know where to go in Travel Oregon? Is it not clear? Is there not a single point of contact, or the data not available? How is it now?
Yeah, I mean, I'll only speak for myself. I know the Dean Runyon report comes out once a year, and that talks about regional, breaks it down by region. And they may have other data sets that we're just not tapping into. But, for example, we invest in our own Smith Travel research or AirDNA research, and we combine that all our own internally. And I think that's fine. There's certain stuff that we're going to want to know at that granular level. But when we're talking to elected officials, there's statewide data, such as 1 out of 7 jobs are in the hospitality world. And the reality is that there is a career path to create a living wage job and all these other things that we can look at higher level statewide data that I think would help motivate. And honestly, when you talk about elected officials, I think it's our job to give them information to be positive about this industry. And often they don't have that information, and therefore they avoid the conversation around the industry. And so that's what I'm thinking is not granular level hotel occupancy rates or average daily rate. I think as communities, we should know those things at the lower granular level, but at the higher level, what truly is the value of the industry, and how do we share that or all speak the same language, as Christine said.
Great points. Thank you for that. And it really helps me to understand some things. Okay, who wants to go next? Joanna, you raise your hand.
I'd like to see a greater tie-in to existing federal and statewide grants for environmental efforts. The one that immediately comes to mind is a program called CPACE that is a federal loan that doesn't have to be repaid for builders that are utilizing solar, wind, all the different alternative energies. So as we think about how we grow responsibly, as in particular, I work for a hotel company. So, my company alone is trying to build additional hotels in Central Oregon. And I know that our competitors are as well. And so when we think about how we want to grow, I'd like to see greater advocacy on the state level for various programs that are already existing. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. I just think there needs to be stronger advocacy for those programs. The one in particular is called CPACE, and it's in front of Bend City Council now. And I've advocated internally. So the president and CEO of my company is speaking on behalf of getting that initiative pushed through, but I don't think it has statewide momentum yet. And we just need one county in Oregon to adopt the program, and then it's adoptable at the statewide level.
Okay, great. Same question for you, Joanna. Is it like, do you know where to go, who to pick up the phone and say, Travel Oregon, sustainable guy, where do I find?
Well, I put it through Merite because the CEO, owner, president of our company is he serves on the board for Travel Oregon. So I knew that if I put it to him, it would have further reach. So I use my internal channels, but if I didn't have that connection, I would have just been left to searching on the website and stumbling through, gatekeepers to find the correct person.
Okay, thank you. Great. And thank you for the link, Christine, as well. Julia, you must have ideas about things that need to change and new stuff that needs to come.
Yeah, thank you. And sorry, I had to jump off and jump back on. So I think I missed the beginning of this exercise, but I'm catching up. And I think what I have is at this moment, probably repetitive to what some of my colleagues have already said. Definitely agree with Christine on educating the community. And I think as we have more and more people moving in and more people visiting, kind of turning around this sentiment that it seems to be for the average person, there's maybe more negative sentiment around the impact of tourism. And there's an element to that that's reality, right? More people on the trails, more people parking, just seeing more congestion and having tourism equated with kind of these negative impacts. But I don't know that we're doing the best job we can on talking about the positive impacts, which, Kevin touched upon, the job creation, the economy, things that we bring to the community that locals benefit from, like air service and, all these public amenities, like more restaurants and retail and museums and things being able to thrive because of tourism. So I'd love to see kind of it be more proactive. I feel like, in my role, I'm mitigating against sort of the negative sentiment, and I'd love to see being more proactive on the positive sentiment around the good impact of tourism, which I know almost every destination kind of struggles with. And the other thing, and I think Kevin, you talked about this in an earlier question that came up, and I'm sorry, I don't know if it's on here already. But I think kind of to that point of being proactive as well, like it's great that, we are doing some messaging about responsible recreation with the Take Care Out There campaign and things like that, and trying to educate visitors and locals, how to recreate responsibly and take care of our land and be good ambassadors for the region. But, I think Visit Bend has really taken a lead role in actually funding back into the region, and I know we've done to some extent with our grant program, but I'd love to see more of a concerted effort, whatever that might look like. And I don't know the answer to that. But rather than working in silos, having more of a concerted effort to really, kind of put the money into these positive impacts that we can create with some of these dollars on, whether it's trails or whatever the project could be, that we could say we directly, funded these versus telling people how to behave on the land. I think they're both important, but I think we need to go beyond talking about, please be responsible when you're out recreating, and actually, like Visit Bend has been doing, and we've done to some extent, is really creating some positive impact on the assets that we're talking about and that we're campaigning about.
Okay, wow, no, great, thank you. Okay, then let's do the round of the Becca. I don't think I heard you already.
Well, I think on the heels of that, one of the many things that Visit Central Oregon does really well, I think, is spreading people out. Oregon is a very big state. And when we talk about, visitors having a really big footprint on, a few different outdoor destinations, Elk Lake and Mount Bachelor. And when there's just a few of those, the concentration of people descend on and are really hard on the land. I think Visit Central Oregon does a good job, and I'd love to see more of spreading people out and promoting lesser known spots within Central Oregon, and even into Eastern Oregon. I think we've done, Travel Oregon done a great job of bringing people to the state. And it's not just Portland and the coast and Bend. Let's, spread people out and kind of disperse that impact.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, dispersal. So your dispersal, you speak about it geographically, like not everybody should not stay in Bend, but
correct. And I think even if everybody were to spend the night in Bend, I still think within a short drive, there's relatively untraveled places to go to. So everybody's not going on the Cascade Lakes Highway and hitting all of those lakes, I think, down, to the Badlands and Steens. And it may go a little bit beyond Central Oregon, but I do think geographically, there are places that are within easy reach of people if they were staying here in Bend.
And dispersal, is there also a seasonal thing going on? Like, you could also see dispersal as a seasonal thing, right? Like everybody comes at the same time, and we need to promote probably the low season.
Oh, yes. And I think we definitely promote the shoulder seasons as well. In wintertime, it's going to be harder for some of the people to reach some destinations. So those locations may change. But I think the more we can talk about some of those lesser known areas and destinations, the better.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the principles of destination management, right? Okay, Kevney, you raised your hand.
Yeah, I want to challenge what Becca was just talking about from the standpoint that it would be great to see a Travel Oregon or a Destination Think or somebody, again, sort of above our destination, do research about whether sacrifice zones or dispersal is the appropriate strategy of destination management. My concern is when you look at dispersal, for example, the wilderness permit recently installed here has forced it. We don't know the impacts on ecological environments when we push people to other trailheads or other areas. And I think it's a slippery slope to just start thinking there's more land, keep going, right? And we start impacting the way of rural America and native tribes and versus a mentality around what, again, it sounds terrible, but sacrifice zones where most of our visitors to Bend are completely, enthralled with something like Phil's Trail. Whereas most of us who live here don't see Phil's Trail as like the creme de la creme of our mountain bike culture. Or, people are happy climbing Tumalo Mountain. They don't always need to go to Green Lakes. And so I don't know what the answer is. And I guess that's the reason I'm bringing it up as a question is, if again, Travel Oregon, or we really had research that established what is the right destination management principles, recognizing growth is going to happen, and how do we manage through that growth from a standpoint that we know we're highly dependent on recreational and natural resources, that would be extremely helpful to someone like me who sometimes feels like I'm flying blind about, yeah, we can push people to lesser known areas, but what happens to that lesser known area 10 years down the road? Is it really designed to deal with even 200 footprints? And I just think that those conversations, while alleviate pressure in one area, and that's like, I'm a big fan of sending as many people as I can to Mount Bachelor because it is already completely ruined natural landscape. It still seems beautiful, but we've already done our thing there. We've humanized that environment. So just throwing it out there for notes. Sorry.
No, these are great points. You don't say no to dispersal. You just say, let's be mindful and do it based on research, right? Where you send people and when you send people,
Frank, can you hear us?
Uh, you hear
Sorry, guys.
Emily?
Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit. Or a lot.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that sounds better. There's just a frozen face on our screen though. Sorry, guys. There's always something wrong with Frank's internet. Here he is. Hey, Frank. It looks like you're on mute now.
Yeah, I was kicked out. I switched my camera off.
Perfect. You sound better now.
Am I back in the breakout session?
You are. You're here with us.
Okay. Yeah, no, sometimes they send you to the main room. No, I was saying these are great points. And I think there is a role for travel on here. Dispersal is something you need to do based on research and data, right? I'm not sure whether you can hear me, Emily.
Yeah, we can hear you. You're breaking up a little, but it's better. Oh. Try this one more time, guys. Thank you for bearing with us.
Okay. If you can hear me, because now I'm not sure.
Yep, we can hear you. We can hear you, Frank.
Okay. Is there one tangible thing we're missing? Somebody mentioned mountain biking. Are there other, and I mean, really, is there accommodation infrastructure that needs to rebuild that, or what about safety after COVID? These things are there. We only have a few minutes left, so is there anything very tangible
I was just going to
that we
add on.
probably overlooked?
Sorry, Frank. I was just going to add on to Kevney's point. I think it's an interesting point talking about dispersal and the environmental impacts. The other thing that came to my mind is the visitor experience. I think, you know, Becca's suggestion is certainly very valid and it's part of our role as the RDMO. But on the flip side, a challenge that we need to talk about at some point is what is the visitor experience when we try to disperse visitors to some of these rural areas? And that could be anything from the infrastructure that exists to staffing issues to lodging. You know, that's probably one of our biggest challenges that, yeah, it makes sense maybe philosophically to disperse people to different areas, but then what is that experience going to be when they get there? And how do we, as an RDMO or as a region, you know, manage and build that to some extent in a way, I think piggybacking on what Kevney's saying, in a way that's responsible and, you know, thinking about kind of long-term impacts as well. So I think it's a good idea. I think it has some challenges that need to be addressed.
No, thank you, Julia. Absolutely. Yeah, you need to have research about the customer journey and how it is from the visitors, how the experience is for the visitors. Okay, we still have 2 minutes. I need to have a volunteer to present this to the rest of the team. We have not prioritized, but that's okay. I think the discussion was very interesting. Kevney, would you be so kind to explain to the rest of the group what we have been talking about?
I would be happy to do my best.
Okay, no, that is great. Fantastic. All right, let's go back to the main room.
Feel like we need elevator music for this portion.
We've said that before.
Yeah.
I could sing if you'd like.
Go for it.
No, I'm not a good singer at all. We have a team member who actually is a professional singer. So maybe I should ask Monica to join us. Frank, do you know any songs in Belgian?
In Belgium, there is no Belgian language.
I know, I keep telling you that. Belgium.
Yeah. Sure we have songs.
All right. I think, is Rebecca back yet? Oh, there she is. It's hard when there's like so many squares and I'm trying to find everyone. All right. Well, Frank, since you were first back in the room, I'll have Emily share the Jamboard. And who did you nominate, or did you nominate anyone to go through it?
Yes. Yeah, I volunteer actually Kevney. He was so kind to say yes.
All right. Yeah, Kevney, if you want to share sort of the key highlights, we'd love to hear what your group discussed.
Yeah, I'll go in order here. I think from a social perspective, a lot of the conversation revolved around the key metrics that could either trickle down from a travel Oregon or at very high level. What are those metrics that we are gauging the industry by in terms of jobs created, economic impact to a community, to really give our local communities an understanding of the value of tourism, but it's in very common language that's heard across all communities. And then locally, we're the ones delivering that message. One of the more sort of tangible ideas was if that job was housed underneath the Travel Oregon, for example, and all of us at local communities could go there to gather information beyond just hotel data, but a deeper dive in research. We talked about something similar in terms of workforce. So I think many industries like construction and tech and others have constant workforce advocates. And historically, the hospitality industry has not had that. So as you go through high school or career tech schooling or even into college, where are you actually getting a nod to the idea that hospitality is a career choice you could make, and having a more consistent presence, whether that's again through a Travel Oregon or Oregon Restaurant Lodging Association, then trickling down into the RDMOs and DMOs, but just making a focused effort on the workforce side. In terms of economic, again, this was sort of back to that agreed upon set of metrics of how we're gauging the industry. What are those KPIs? I think in general, communities are not so interested in us talking about occupancy rates and these other metrics, but what are those key economic metrics? And then maybe more consistent access to statewide data. So Dean, running your reports come out annually. Is there a way to look at quarterly reports or shorter timeframe snapshots of how the industry is doing, which I think could also help expose the seasonality of the industry and help justify why organizations like Visit Bend or Visit Central Oregon continue to market heavily in winter when we see those sort of peaks and valleys throughout the year. In terms of environmental, we talked a lot about, do we continue to promote lesser known areas and sort of the disbursement strategy versus what I refer to as the sacrifice zone strategy. And ultimately where we ended up with is we don't know enough about what the right strategy is in terms of when we market different locations or try the disbursement strategy, what are the unintended consequences of those new environments we're sending people to? Is the user experience what we want? Are we doing more ecological damage than we thought we were? And I think, again, at a state level, if not national level, it would be great to have data that we can lean on to say this is why we are executing a dispersal strategy or a sacrifice zone strategy. And then additionally, greater advocacy around grant programs and other efforts that organizations could lean on for funding. And then part of that stemmed from not only just on the building side, I think it was Joanna that brought up Emerite and looking at grant programs to be more sustainable building programs, but also, again, are things like Take Care out there enough, or do we really need to look at putting money in the ground? And do we need to take our environmental and ecological practices a step further and look at carrying capacity and enhance trailheads to meet the demand that we know we're going to see in 10 and 15 years based on the growth we've seen over the last 10 or 15 years. And then down in the pink, some of those more tangible ideas. There was a conversation about a travel Oregon employee designated for each region. That could be sort of that conduit, proper research around the sacrifice, and then that I already touched on that bottom one, but that visitor experience look like in terms of dispersal. So as we look at destination management, are we looking holistically at how our decisions are going to impact those destinations that maybe aren't used to the visitor volume that could be coming their way? And I think that captures it. I don't know if Frank has any opinions or any other team members do.
No, you did a great job, according to me. Somebody else wants to comment on this?
I think that's a really good capture, Kevney. Thank you.
Yes, and
Alright.
as always, feel free to add more to the chat if you have any questions or additional thoughts. Even if you aren't in the group, love to hear your insights. Okay, thanks, Kevney. Rebecca, your team, who did you nominate?
I volunteered Udara. So I'm going to share my screen so you don't have to memorize it. All right. So hopefully we can see this well enough.
Yeah.
Whoop, nope, I'm going a bit too much.
All right. That
There
looks
we
good
go.
to me. Okay.
Thanks, Laura.
Yeah, so in terms of social, we started to prioritize the multi-day itineraries for helping folks see for multiple reasons. One, to show people that there are things that don't cost a lot of money to do in Central Oregon, and also encourage travel outside of Bend into the other surrounding communities, and also kind of building on the sustainability fund through Visit Bend, and think about whether that was possible to expand. And another high urgency area in social was to have some kind of campaign in the conversations that came up earlier in the larger group for residents to understand the benefits of tourism and kind of nip any sort of negative feelings that local communities feel towards tourism that can be a turnoff to visitors. As well as worker housing was a big element in terms of social that was highly urgent, but we also acknowledge that maybe not very feasible to start because of the resources needed for something like that. And then in the economic area, transportation was a big one, whether, in evaluating whether things like buses versus public transportation that's also available for locals, not just for visitors, especially to kind of connect to that multi-day itinerary concept of getting folks outside of Bend into the surrounding communities. And let's see what else. And then prioritize or showing people that there are, opportunities for smaller budget trips. Like I mentioned earlier, kind of a lot of these areas are cross-cutting between the social and economic. And then promoting that, places like, or services like Uber, DoorDash are becoming more available in certain areas. And then in the environmental conversation, we talked much more about recycling infrastructure and setting people up for success. Expanding something like the visitor pledge so that we can, show people to, or encourage people to walk the talk, and focus that on environmental elements, but also acknowledging that could be open to other social pledges as well. The shuttle concept also overlapped with some of the environmental benefits. And then some of the recycling, garbage infrastructure, signage, education, and support to lodging facilities was a really big one. And I was personally excited to see about that, that it was high priority for us, because at Rethink Waste, we are about to launch a pilot program that addresses just that. So I'm excited to connect offline with some of the people who had mentioned that that was a priority for them. They were excited about that. Feel free to add anything, anyone else in our group.
No, that was excellent. Thank you so much.
Great. All right. So we're coming to the end. I'm going to just shut you down, Rebecca.
All right.
There. And we wanted to just have a final discussion before we go into next steps. We know a lot of the insights today have been very, very valuable. And really, we want to just open up the floor to a final question to you and question to you for us to sort of think about, this transformational strategy is, is there one piece of advice for Destination Think and Travel Oregon? One sentence you could put in the chat. We can also call upon you as well. Something that you don't want us to overlook, especially for your region. Any advice for the transformational strategy, anything at all, just to ensure that we're hearing everyone's perspectives outside of what was brought forward today. So you're happy to raise your hand, or if you want to put it in the chat, that would be great. So I'll give you a minute to kind of think about that. And Frank, feel free to add any other context if you'd like. No, I said it good. Okay. See a lot of people thinking, which is good. Julia, any thoughts from your side?
I guess I was thinking overall, about these funds that go to the region, which, I said in the regional call, I think it's such a great program, having worked in other states where it's not quite as equitable. And I was thinking about how to put it into words, but I'll just say it. I guess my overriding thought is, given all these issues we're facing, and that a lot of them came up in the breakouts, how does Travel Oregon, with the help of Destination Think and the regions, how do we work together? And how do we leverage these regional funds to the highest and best use? Which is a big goal, right? But talking about some of these things that are these recurring things about, the environmental impact, the anti-tourism sentiment, where could these dollars be more leveraged, I guess, is kind of my overriding thought. And that's not to say that I don't think the program's doing a lot of good, but I guess one of my feedbacks on the last session was like, how can we be more proactive with mitigating some of the negative impacts of tourism and flipping it to more of a positive outlook, and how could these funds contribute to that?
Yeah.
Julia, can I just ask you a follow-up question on that? What would you see as the main barriers?
I don't really think there are any barriers. I think, it might be a rework of the program. I mean, we talked about in the regional session how, and I'm not necessarily saying it's a bad thing, but I don't know if it's the highest and best use. Like, for example, a portion of the funds come to us and, it's sort of mandated that they be put back into a co-op with Travel Oregon for marketing. And I've heard from, when I first came into the position, I was like, this is so great. When I was in Colorado, I represented Aspen, and I might have to go to Colorado and say, we need your help. And they'd say, you seem like you're doing okay, because we're Aspen, right? So it seemed very equitable, and it seemed like a very fair and good process. But as I've gone into my role further, and I've heard from some of my DMO partners and my industry partners, is that the highest and best use of these funds to do some marketing around, like, say, let's take responsible recreation as an example. We're participating in the Take Care Out There campaign, which I think is a really valid, good campaign. But I just think if we all work together, there's some significant funds there. Could those actually go to something that would improve the trail system or improve the infrastructure versus just telling people how to responsibly recreate? Like, is there a higher use for the funds that we could work together to say, I mean, we all believe and understand that tourism is doing good, but is it doing the highest good that we can get to, I guess, is what my overriding thought is.
Yeah. So figuring out together what that could be.
Yeah, I mean, is there something we could be funding that's very tangible and affecting our, you know, our landscape and our tour in our environment in a good, positive way versus just telling people at this point, you know, make sure you take care out there and be responsible out there, which I think is a good message, but is there something we could be funding that's going to be even more like return on the dollar?
Right. That's great. Thanks, Julia. Kevin, you put in the chat, and feel free to weigh in as well. Anybody else is, I don't think we can go too far in taking care of our recreational and natural resources. Climate change positions the same way. If we want to maintain our position in the consumer's mind, we need to be concrete and forward thinking on how we tackle the issues. So yes, definitely agree. Thanks, Kevin. Anyone else want to weigh in on, you know, the climate change actions and positions?
I think it's going to be something we're going to have to navigate every summer. And how do we do that is, I guess, a question for us. How do we've already dealt with having to cancel people coming to visit because they're concerned about smoke. So I agree with Kevin on this statement, like how do we, this needs to be something that's an element we think about, and I feel like our daily conversations, because we're going to be dealing with it, I think, more and more.
Absolutely.
I'll add one thought, just because I think about it a lot, but I don't know if many of you attended the futurist conversation that was part of the Ben Chamber, but it was super fascinating, right? Like the rate of change is incredible. And if we think back 5 years to what we didn't know we'd have today, the amount of newness there. And I think that rate of change is going to continue to be fast. So I even think about things like, you know, Julia sits on the coast, the Central Oregon Air Service team. Not saying we need to do this because it's radical, but like, what if RDM took a stance that we're only going to use electric airplanes in 10 years, right? Like, where do you actually make stances to create change that seem wild today? But what as an industry are we actually advocating for that maybe we don't hold the keys to, but is honestly where we need to be thinking, because it's going to be in our face before we know it. And I think that's, if there's one challenge I would have to travel Oregon, that there is no, you flat out can't go too far right now, because it's going to be here before we know. And if we're talking about a 6-year plan and all we're talking about is recreational messaging, we are another 6 years behind.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. Yep, my team is nodding profusely. Thanks, Kevin. So in the essence of time, feel free to add any other thoughts as well. If you want to email myself or Emily with just anything additional that pops up in your mind that you didn't have a chance to chat about today. As always, we want to hear everyone's perspectives to really help drive this transformational strategy forward. With that in mind, next steps. So Frank kind of touched on our strategic process at the beginning of our call today. This is sort of a recap of, you know, where we've been in this process over the timeline. So right now we're sort of in the where could we be and how do we get there stage of our strategic process. As Frank alluded to at the beginning, our goal is, after these workshops and co-creation labs finish this week, our team will be heads down, sinking their teeth into so many insights that we have pulled from our engagement with different regions, the RDMO, the tribes, the BIPOC community, etc. And putting together a strategic framework that will then be presented to Travel Oregon for their feedback and alignment. And that strategic framework will then drive the final transformational strategy and organizational design. And the goal is to present that sort of January of 2022 and then really truly hit the ground running in February, March of next year. Destination Think has built in a phase 3 of this process in terms of getting the transformational strategy off the ground, working really closely with Travel Oregon in the sense of setting key priorities and actions to drive the implementation forward. So that is sort of the next steps on where we go from here. And I'm just 1 minute over on our time today. I really, again, wanted to thank on behalf of Destination Think your time, your insights, and most importantly, the discussion. It has been super valuable for us in this process, and we really look forward to really distilling all that information today and pulling that into the direction for the transformational strategy. So with that, I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and hope you so much try to enjoy the sunshine, and we'll hope to speak with you very soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Talk to you later.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.